All right. Is it just 5 of y'all in here? Because I can't get into Blackboard right now, as y'all probably noticed. It's throwing me, I don't know my password, but yet it let me on machines with it this morning. And I'm on Blackboard down in the office, so I don't know what its problem is. Or if it's not happy that I'm trying to get on 2 machines. In any event, and then it threw me the error that popped up, that message there that said it wanted me to validate myself when after I'd logged on to the machine, which makes no sense. So that it wanted me to validate that I was myself, and I'm going, what? I just did that. I logged on to the machine with a valid logon. So I don't know where it's going off to. And then it's not letting me do the other part that I was going to try to do in here today. So that I got to get somebody from IT to get that, and that was I was going to use the microphone on there with the camera, and I was going to do collaborate to record what we did in class today. And I really wasn't going to use the camera. I was just going to grab the microphone from there, and I was going to share my screen with Collaborate so that then it would be on there. But it doesn't want to do that. That it said I have to have administrative authority to install the web camera. And I don't have administrative authority. I do in the office, but not in here on there. And then the other one is that probably Thursday I'll show you that we'll get on the real device, and one of you will have to log on the machine, and then I'll get on there and show you using the real device. It'll have to be with one of y'all's logins, because I can't log in student machines, because that's the way they've got it set up here. That y'all's login won't work on faculty machines, which is normal, but that faculty logons won't work on student machines, which is not normal at other places. But that's the way they've done it. In any event, we are now into chapter 2, which goes through and shows you how to use the iOS on the Cisco devices. And look at something real quick. And they're going to be working with a switch in the chapter. Now, most of the stuff will work, same commands will work on the routers, okay? But you're going to be concerned with the switch in terms of your lab and stuff also, that it's going to correspond. But most of it's going to work the same way if you were working on the router. Does everybody follow on that? So the commands are similar. Because routers and switches work a little bit different, there are some things that either won't quite work exactly the same or don't work on one or the other, okay? But with what they're showing you in the chapter, basically, I think just about everything would work either way for you, okay? So how you get into it, etc., is the same, and then the basic, and they just have you doing some basic configurations with it. So that's what we're doing in chapter 2, is going through and seeing the iOS, which is the operating system that Cisco is using on their routers and switches. So that it's an internet operating system is where the I is coming from, okay? Because you use the devices to hook your network together and hook your networks with networks. It is Unix based, but it's not. There's some similarity there, but it's not a full similarity. So if you already know something on Linux or Unix, some of it's going to have a somewhat of familiar look, but it's going to be different. Does everybody follow on that part? That it's not just a different variation of Linux. It is a whole different thing, but it is based off of Unix, okay? Which is where Linux is based off of too. So that's where it's going to come from. So you're going to have the commands and stuff in it. So you're going to be doing the work on packet tracer. So let's look real quickly, go into it from that direction. So I'm going to go to y'all's class and grab a lab. And that way also that you see, and it doesn't care which 2451 I grab because I'm not submitting it and they're all the same. So to find your labs, I've told you in your assignment which labs you've got to do, and there's about 3 of them, okay? I can't remember exactly, but I know it's more than 1, and it was like 3. And so if you go into the course, it should all be showing up there. It is. Because no matter how I can't see stuff. And then if you go launch the course, you get to here, okay? Go to modules, you get that different appearance where it tells you which module and the test and everything else on it. Where this one, and if you click on these, it takes you to the next level, on it. So that if you notice your numbers when I gave you the assignments, a 4-part number. And so this is, the first number is which chapter it is, and then it splits it in parts. You could go through that way to do it, but to me the easier way for you to do is to go down here to the course index. And then there's a packet tracer index. And so you can see, and they didn't used to have this. It used to be you had to dig through the chapter to find it. Now, you can go to that packet tracer index. I told you there were several of them, but I'm pretty sure there is. Yeah. It looks like there's probably, I think I assigned all 4 of them. They're down here. So then you can look down the list and you can find whichever one it is that you're looking for. So I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to click on the second one because we're not doing navigating, we're up to be able to set up commands. And then it's going to take you to this screen, which is where if you had a trace through, you would have gotten to also. And if you were just reading through the curriculum, you'd get through this page also. From here, two choices on it. Packet tracer instructions and packet tracer PKA. All you need is the second one, okay? The first one just has the instructions, and it's a PDF file. The second one has the actual file that you're going to work in, plus it has the instructions. So you really don't need the first one unless you want it to print out the instructions, but they'll both open up in 2 windows for you, okay? So most people don't ever need that first one, but it's there if you want it. And it's going to download a PKA file, and since I'm in Chrome, it downloads it right here. And that it's in the downloads folder at that point also for you if you go looking in the folder. So I can just click on it here, assuming that you have Packet Tracer installed on your machine. I'm watching this pop up. I'm hoping that they don't have this one in the latest version. They don't. Okay. Because if what they've developed, they developed in the latest version of Packet Tracer, it's not going to work in the older versions. And it'll pop up and tell you you need a new version of Packet Tracer. And those of you that have already been into Packet Tracer know it's got a whole different screen that's more colorful than that screen that we had as a startup screen. So that was the giveaway to me. Not sure which version this one is right off, but it's definitely not 7.2. So now I've got two files open here. And of course it's got a window that we've got to answer on that it didn't put on top, and that's irritating when Windows does that at times. This isn't the only program that doesn't put the pop-up on top. Because I hit that occasionally. When you get this one right here, y'all can just cancel on it or hit OK. You can just go leave it alone. You don't need to put anything into it, okay? So for that user profile, either hit OK, and it says it will reset it if the user information is changed, and that doesn't make any difference to us at this point. But if you're coming back into it, and you've already done work saved and you're going backward, I would just do a cancel. So you can do a cancel there. Usually I do cancel, but I chose for some reason to do OK. But I usually just cancel on that one. So that's there. Now, Packet Tracer is going to come already because you've got a Packet Tracer activity. They've already set up for you equipment in here. So that we've got on this lab 2 switches, 2 PCs. Okay? Now then, after chapter 2, you'll be able to just double click on the switches and go straight into them, or the routers. However, on this assignment, I don't think you can. I think it makes you do it like it's real world. Nope, it lets us go on in. Okay, so it's letting us go on into it. The other option is, if it tells you that the switch is locked, which on that navigating one, that first one, I think it does it to you on that one. It does it to you on one of them, okay? What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to install a console cable from here to here, from the PC to the switch, which is like I've described up here, that this is coming from the PC, and actually I'll plug into the switch or the router right there for us to be able to work with it on the PC on the real piece of equipment. Okay? On the real, you can't go straight into the router or switch. You've got to go through a PC to get into it. In Packet Tracer, you can go directly into the router or switch, like you were going through the PC. Does that make sense to everybody? So it gives you a shortcut there. So like we can do in just a moment. But just to show you on what you got to do on that you're going to come down here, you're going to choose the cabling, which is the one with the lightning bolt. Well, that's weird. Okay, this one's got it locked where you can't change any equipment on the screen. Usually it's pretty open, but you click on this one and then it would change what's showing down below, change what's showing over there, because right now it's on routers, and that's a whole set of routers that's available to you. There's actually a whole bunch more that scroll off the screen, different routers that you can use. Or we can choose on cabling here, and then one of the choices will be a light blue, and I believe it's labeled as console cable. Okay, but it's a light blue one, like that cable was there. And that you'll choose it, and then you'll come up here and click on either the PC or the switch. Either end you can choose from, and then you'll tell it what to plug it into. On the PC, you're plugging it into the serial port. On the switch or the router, you're plugging it into the console port, and that'll be labeled for you on your choices on it. Okay? And then you'll be able to go to the PC, click on the PC, and when we go into this box in just a second again, where I go back into switch, you'll actually be able, it's got stuff blocked on me. you'll have a choice there that you'll be able to choose to tell it you want to do a terminal connection. Okay? Because it'll give you a whole bunch of connections, and you tell it you want to do it as terminal instead of going into the PC of the actual desktop of the PC, and several other choices. Alright, now, so when we come into here, this is just like if we turned on the switch, plugged in through the console port. Same thing would appear on the screen on your PC in the terminal emulation box, which in here we've got PuTTY set up to go to those. There are several others available too, but we're using PuTTY, which is a freeware product out there to do terminal emulation. Now, it gives you some basic information about the iOS here, because it tells us that we're on version 12.2, gives us some dates on it, and it says press return to get started. And then it gives us some other information about some ports and stuff, and so we'll just hit enter or return. And at this point on the switch, it comes up and takes us to the actual device, and that we're at its command prompt. Now, if you're on the routers, it will come up and ask you, and it should have come up on the switch. That's a little weird. I guess that's right. It'll ask you if you want to do an automatic configuration or not, and you're going to do no. That you're going to answer no to it, and then it'll get you to the same point. Okay? That it'll ask you if you want to do initial automatic configuration or something slightly different. You can open Packet Tracer without a lab into it, and you just have a blank desktop. So when I talk about the desktop, when you're talking about Packet Tracer, it's this whole big white area here is the desktop. That's what Packet Tracer calls it, and that's where we put our devices. We're in a logical view right now, and on this version, to go to a physical view, we're going to click that button, and it will show us how the stuff is actually laid out physically. And notice it's showing us by here that it's in a city. You can narrow it on down and find the building and the room where the device is sitting. Does that make sense? Most of the time, you're going to work in the logical view. Now, on y'all's version, the 7.2 version of Packet Tracer, it doesn't have it as picture buttons up here anymore. It says physical and logical. Okay? So some things are going to change slightly around on it, but it's basically going to be the same thing. On your assignments, I am got a requirement on you, and this will cost you 30 points if you don't do it. Now, on the first assignment, I will return it to you and tell you got to fix it and repair it if you don't do it. But after that, after chapter 2, you're going to lose 30 points if you don't do. You've got to put your name on the desktop somewhere. Okay? To do that, you're going to use this button over here that looks like a sheet of paper. Now, on y'all's version, it has moved slightly, but it's still, I'm pretty sure it's still in the column over here. Okay? But you can find that sheet of paper. And we don't have the newer version of Packet Tracer in here, so I can't show it to you on the new one, okay? But I think it now is the third button down here instead of the second button. But it is going to be the paper-looking one. And it's going to be the same as right there that the pop-up on it's going to say place note. Because you're going to put a note on the desktop. So if I click that, and then I just come out anywhere on here, it doesn't make any difference where you put it. Please put it in this part of the screen here and not off somewhere way drastic off, because y'all can, this is a huge desktop. You're only looking at a little piece of it, because we can scroll way across here And we can scroll way down here. Okay? So, preferably put it somewhere up in that area, okay? Where I can see it easily. And all you do is click on that note paper, so that you've got the note paper chosen now, and then come over and click wherever you want to put it, and then type in your name. And hopefully type it correctly in. Click outside, and it was just a text box, and if you want to come back to where it just works normal, click back up onto where it's the little drawing around where you got the drawing tool on. Okay? Everybody see how to get your name on the desktop. And if you look at my directions, it tells you, in my directions in Blackboard says, make sure you put your name on the desktop. Okay? So that your name's got to be on that desktop. Any questions on that part? Because that's an add-on that the book doesn't tell you about. That's a requirement of mine. Alright, now, and if you ever want to delete something, you put something out there and you didn't mean to put it out there, the X will allow you to delete stuff. This one, it probably, well, it's not going to. We already know that because it's locked where we can even add anything back. But if you click on the red X, you can then come over and, like, if that wire was the wrong wire there that you had put in, you can come over and click on that wire and it would remove the wire. In this case, it said we can't do any configuring of this screen on this one. Okay? We got to live with what they gave us. But you could, other ones, you'll be able to add equipment on there. You'll have to do the equipment normally on your ALS labs in this class. When you get to the third and fourth class, you got to put equipment in on some of them, particularly on the final. But in this class, you'll have to wire them, and so you'll be using your wires to wire the equipment together on later assignments. Okay? Straight through cable here, which means both ends are exactly the same, which is your standard cable that comes with everything. So that if you got one with the box with a piece of equipment, it should be a straight through cable is what they've included in it. Connects different type devices together, which is what you're normally doing. And that's a solid line. This dotted line here, dashed line, because I really think there is one with dots, is a crossover cable. And what that does is it changes two pairs, switches them from one end to the other. What that does is the send pair on the one end then is the receive pair on the other end. Well, it's got to be switched along the way, or on this cable it's sending. If we used the straight through one there, we'd be sending to the send and on it. But when it's two different types of equipment, one end is got it switched on what it's seeing on the wires coming in, and so you don't have to switch it out. Now, the newest versions of your switches and routers, you can actually use either one of them because it's got an intelligent port on the switch and the router, and it looks at it and listens first thing on the send and the receive port and says, which one is the other piece of equipment sending something to me on? That'll be my receive, and my other will be my send. Does that make sense? So you've got intelligent ones on that now, and we'll see that later on. So on newer equipment, most of the time you can just use straight throughs all the time. Although there's still some equipment that does require a crossover on it. When we do the cables at mid-semester and at the end, you're going to make both of those cables, and the cable here that is a rollover cable that just switches the pins completely. So what's pin 1 on one end is pin 8 on the other end, and right on down, 2 and 7, 3 and 6, etc. That's a security device. These two are the two most commonly used. The very most commonly used is straight through one. And that's what you'll also see people sometimes call an Ethernet cable. Well, it's really They're really all Ethernet cables because they're all designed to use on an Ethernet network. But you'll see people generically call the straight through one an Ethernet cable a lot of times. Barracuda, which you may have heard ads for on the radio at some point, that builds firewalls and stuff, they confused in their directions a few years ago. I haven't installed one again in a few years, but when I installed one a few years ago, their directions said hook an Ethernet cable up from the Barracuda firewall to the switch. And I went, okay. So you want a straight through cable. Straight through cable is what came in the box. Hooked it up and the thing would not work. And I'm going, no, it's not to the switch, it was to the router. And I'm going, it really shouldn't be using a straight through cable here because firewall and a router are actually both routers. And I'm going, that shouldn't really work because you can't, depending on how intelligent their machine was. I fought it for an hour because their directions distinctly said and had in the box a straight through cable. And I looked at it to check it. And I finally went, this just isn't going to work. And I'm going, it should be a crossover. And I went out and made myself a crossover cable, went back into the place, crossover cable, and everything went to work fine. I wrote them and told them, your directions are crazy and you got the wrong cable in the box to top it all off. And they said, well, the cable we put in the box really wasn't for you to hook that up. That's so you could hook your PC up to our firewall. And I'm going, okay, but that's not what you normally need to do. And they said, and it was an Ethernet cable that you used because a crossover is an Ethernet cable. I said, but the generic term as far as public is, I said, I will agree, generically it is an Ethernet cable, but I said, people think of an Ethernet cable as a straight through cable. I said, in my case, I got it to work because I realized what you'd done wrong, and I went, this should be a crossover, and went and fixed it. But I said, you wasted my time on a Sunday afternoon hooking this thing up. So be aware of all of that, okay? So there's that. There's a file options just like you're used to in Windows up at the top. You're going to save your file right there. That you've got a save and a save as. If you do a save, you can save it back to wherever you opened it from, which is fine. That you can save it right there in your download directory, unless you moved it around or whatever. You can save it right back there. Or you can do save as and save it to wherever you want to keep it on your machine. That works just normal. Don't use the save as PKZ. That does a zip packet. That does a packet tracer zip file that doesn't exactly work right, and you don't need it zipped. Okay, it's a small file. Y'all can email me that file if you have a problem. Because if you run into a problem doing the assignment, write me about it. And it's not something I can just answer generically. I'm going to write you back and tell you, email me back the file. And I can go in and look at what you've done, and from what you're saying you're having a problem on, then figure out exactly what to tell you. Because I can look at what all you've got everything set as. Does everybody follow on that? And then write you back and tell you, here's what you need to do. Likewise, when you go to turn it in, you're just going to attach that packet tracer file, PKA file, to your in the Dropbox and Blackboard. Any questions on that?
Will all of them be small enough to where you can do that? Will all the
Yes.
packets?
I have never seen a packet tracer file too big to not do that. And that includes when I took the next level of the courses, the first one of them, the CCNP course 1. I couldn't think the letters on it right there. And that was, we must have had 35, 40 devices on there. And it still is a small file. Okay? It will fit in the Dropbox. Every one of them, the students has always fit, and every time I've ever had them email them to me, I've always emailed. Okay? So you're going to use save or save as. And if you did want to print the screen, you could print it, obviously, for your own doing. I don't need any print of it, okay? Because you're going to send me the actual file, and I'm going to go in there and look at your real file. As opposed to in other classes, if you're taking server from me, you got some screen prints and such, okay? Or in the security class, that we've got that big file with the Linux installation there in the virtual machine. Y'all can't send me that machine, okay? 'Cause that's too big to send. But these are small. Now, remember, this is purely text-based, okay? There is no graphics as far as in those devices. Now, yes, Packet Tracer is graphic-based, but it's a small file. And you're not really sending me the Packet Tracer program, you're just sending me how it sets it up in Packet Tracer. Now, because some of you are going to be using the latest version of Packet Tracer and some are using older, I have to use the latest one, and when they come up with a new one, I will know as soon as they release a new one, because when I go to grade y'all's next assignment, somebody will have gone to the newest one right off the bat, and it'll give me a message that I can't open it because I don't have the right version. And I'll have to upgrade my machines I work on. Alright, the other one is, for y'all to be aware of here, is over, that's my computer, that's a third. And I really didn't need to open Packet Tracer in the first place, which I had done, so I've got a blank one sitting right here. So here's when I was saying about when you want it to add devices. We could click on the device, because this one doesn't have a activity loaded into it. And I could click a device. I can come up here and click where I want it. And if I put another device up here, and then if I want it to wire it, well, let's stick a PC up there. And then if I want it to wire it, I just come over to this wire one and click on the wire. That's not the wiring. I told you wrong. Yeah, it is. There it is. So notice we got a lightning bolt wire. That's a light blue one. You may not be able to see the light blue from back there, but it literally is same colors there. There's the solid one like we were just working with. There's the dashed one just like was already pre-built in yours. Okay? This one, the light blue one, which has got a bend in it because it's really doing a hop across on it, and that's how they usually show it. I would choose it, come up here, and I could go to the PC, click on the PC, and it will give me all of my connections available on that PC. Any place I can plug a wire into. Not just this wire, okay? It won't let you plug it into the wrong thing, but it's a choice there. Because notice it's got two USBs, an RS-232, which is a serial port. That's that little wire port that's got 9 pins on it that's not on y'all's new machines, but are on older machines, including these machines in here. Okay? And it used to be even a bigger. Serial ports used to be 24 pin, I think it was. I think it's 24. 2 USBs and an Ethernet. Okay? It's sitting on that PC. And that's what you normally have. You just won't have the serial one anymore on your newest machines generally. But you're going to have those other 3 ports on your PC, right? Because you're going to have a network port and probably at least 2, if not 4 or 6 USBs. So if I try to plug it into the USB, cable cannot be connected to that port. So I'll click out, come back, click again on the PC. It will plug into the RS-232, and now it's plugged in there. So now I got a wire I can wander all over the place with. This is one of those neat little ones that's on a spool right there that's got unlimited on spool. Okay, so now I can come to the router, wherever I want to connect it to. And it just hovering over it's going to show me all the ports with settings on them, okay? But if I click on it, it gives me the same thing again that I had up there. So on that router, there's 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, a console port, and an auxiliary port. And if y'all look at any of these routers in here, you'll see that's the case, okay? Except for these have also, it doesn't have listed here actually the serial ones that are on there for the big cables that we'll talk about later to connect routers to routers. So I want it to go to the console port, and at that point it's into there. Okay? Now if I go into the PC and come over to desktop, it gives me the desktop on that PC. Now it doesn't look like the desktop you're really used to, but think Linux of your desktops in there. It's got some resemblance to that one, okay? It's a more basic desktop on it. It's not Windows 7 or 10 or XP or even 95. It's back to Windows 1 type thing, okay? And if you were to choose terminal here, that would be right. That book tells you running PuttyTail or something else that they'll tell you on. If you do that, it then pops up just like they tell you PuttyTail would do to you, asking for these configuration settings, and that you'll just click OK on that, which would happen on your PC with PuttyTail, and that you can just go with the default ones on that. And look what you see right there. That's that same basic screen as we saw on the other, except this is a router, so now it says here, I told you wrong. It says, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? You're not wanting it to go through an automated type system where it just asks you a couple of questions and does it. Your answer always is no. Okay? And so you're always going to answer no on that one of just doing in and enter. It then gets to that press return to get started, which was what we saw on the other screen, right? And if I hit enter, I'm at a similar prompt. Does everybody follow on that? That's what we're going to see when we connect to the router on those, or if we connect to the switch, we'll see the other screen. But now y'all can see how to put equipment and wiring on there, okay? The big one is you are going to have to do the console cable in one of those assignments, okay? You're going to console cable to the switches to when it has you do it, unless they've changed the assignment on me. And I wouldn't task them on that. All right, so then I'm going to close that one out because we're not using that packet tracer screen there, so we don't confuse ourselves. And if you hadn't saved it, it's going to give you your bit of saving it like before, okay? Like on anything else in Windows. So it's a normal Windows program. Does everybody follow on that? I don't want to save this one, so I'm going to answer no. And now we've got this one back here that's the real one we were working on. Now, the other part I want to show you right here that comes with it, and normally comes with packet tracer activities, is where I was trying to get to a moment ago, is I want to come back to the directions. There's a couple of things here that are really important for you to be aware of. First one is, it's got a completion and a score over here. Now, why in the world they've already got you points assigned here, I don't know on this assignment, but they did. Okay? They gave you a sixth of the work done. I guess that was setting up the parts that, but they didn't do their scoring part correctly on it in any of it. But right here, it tells you what your score is on this assignment. This one's measured in terms of points. Most of them are on percentage, and that you'll see it on 100, okay? This one, you want to get to 72 out of 72. Does everybody follow on that? So every time you do something in directions, you're going to see this score climbs, okay? And your objects get to 72 out of 72. You get to keep playing with it as long as you need. So I shouldn't get any assignments from y'all that have less than 100 on there. Either the 100% number on the ones that do it that way, or on the ones that do it this way, where it's the number of the number. In this case, 72 of 72. If you turn it in just like this on it, you're going to get a 16 on the assignment. Does everybody follow on that? Because that's 12 out of 72 is a sixth of it, and a sixth of 100 is 16. So there's your scoring. Use that number. Second part is there's a button here that says check results. If this number hasn't gotten to 100 and you think you've done everything, you're going, what did I do wrong? Or you're going along and you're going, it won't climb, what am I doing wrong? But more than likely it's when you get done and you're going, what have I done wrong that I didn't get 100? Click check results. Now on the real equipment, these two things aren't there for you, okay? Actually all three things I'm going to show you right now. But when you come here, it's that overall feedback usually doesn't really give you anything. It's the second button is the one that you want, the second tab. Click on it, and it gives you a list of everything that's graded. Okay? They've already put in the message of the day and gave you 12 points for doing that. I don't know what they were thinking about when they did that, but they did. Okay? And then they got a list of everything else that you had to do, and it tells you what things are wrong. So it says the console line login is incorrect. Well, we know it is right now because we haven't put it in there. Okay? But if you hadn't put the command in correctly, you didn't give it the right name or whatever, it's going to tell you here that it's incorrect. So when it says it's incorrect, either it's not been done correctly, or two, it's not been done. Does that make sense? That's going to tell you where your problem is. It's not telling you specifically exactly, but it's leading you to it for it. Okay? You know where to go back and look based on what sits there with a red X. Because if it's correct, and since this is one of the first assignments that may have been why they did it, gave you something already put in there so that you'd see something correct showing on there to realize the difference. It gives you a green check, or if it's not correct, it gives you a red X. You want to get rid of all those red X's and get it all where it says correct. Everybody follow on that? And if you notice right there, you're basically doing the same thing on these two switches. Okay? Now, it gets to be a much longer list on the future ones. Okay? And then it breaks it on up in some other directions over there for you. But this is your big part on that one. I really don't use the other two tabs. I've used connectivity tests sometime in the past, but not really. It's just another thing you can see some things on. But this is a real handy one there. Now, while you're in that, you can't look at anything else in Packet Tracer because it actually locks you out of the rest of Packet Tracer where you can get back to it while you got this screen open. So you got to close this screen to then go back into Packet Tracer at that point. There wasn't just a hover over, pop over thing. That other screen disappeared on it. The other one is, and if you really give up on everything, you can do the reset activity and it puts it back just like it was brand new. Okay? I'm not a big advocate of that one, but if you decide to just hang it all up, you could. The other one is down here on the real Packet Tracer screen. Two buttons down there. The first one, power cycle devices. What that does is that turns the power off and on all of your devices. I think I may have used that like once or twice in something, but that's not a button you're really going to use. The second button you're going to use. And if you go to work on Cisco equipment, you're going to go, I wish the real equipment had this. And I've had students tell me that. that there is no fast forward time button on the real equipment. Now, they've moved them around slightly, but they're still somewhere in this. They may be up at the top now, I'm not sure, but I think they are still down here at the bottom. But you can find them on the screen in version 7. This is really version 6, okay? So you may have to look for them, but you can find those buttons. And I think my directions may tell you where to find them anyway. But the fast forward time, these first labs doesn't make a big difference to you, but as you get further on along, particularly when you get in the next course and maybe even a little later in this one, it takes time for all of the devices to learn about each other because of how the protocols work, as we'll learn later on in the course. Fast forward time, every time you click it, it jumps 30 seconds into the future. Okay? And some things take 1.5 minutes to 3 minutes for it to occur. You can click that button and jump time and have it. What you normally want is all those lights green. They start off red, they go orange as they start communicating with each other, and then when they're fully communicating and everything's working right, they're green. You can use that because if you've ever noticed when you get on a new network or something, you might have noticed somewhere along, sometimes it takes a few minutes, a minute or two before it catches onto the network and starts talking on the others, and that you notice your little lights flash on and off down there about it. That's what's happening, and that if you had fast forward button on your machine at that point, you could have your stuff connected to the internet a whole lot quicker. Okay? Does that make sense to y'all? So that's a real handy button there. That will save you time later on. Okay? Alright, everybody got the general parts of all of this. Now let's go into our devices. So if we go into the switch, and I need to come back up here because I'm still in deleting, and I don't want to delete. Be careful on that though, okay? If you go to delete something, come back over here to the side and change which icon you're on so that you don't delete something you didn't mean to delete. I've done that, okay? I deleted a cable I meant to delete, and then I'm sitting here not realizing I'm still in delete, and I delete a device that I've configured. And all of a sudden I gotta do some more work. So come back over, choose just this normal one, the select button, which if you used Photoshop or whatever, that one definitely looks familiar to you because that's your default type thing where you select what parts of the picture you want on it and stuff to crop it and such. It's the same looking button. And get back into it. I think if you're in the note you'll be, no, because every time you click on anything it's going to want to add a note on top. So then I'll come back over. You may have to move boxes around, and it tells me the switch is available again. And remember, we've already gone through that first stuff, so it's not going to show that to me again because I'm still connected there the whole time. I've already got that switch through that part, and so I'm just coming back to the switch where I was. Okay? And I typed something there. The prompt will give you what the device is. So this is more Linux, Unix look there. It's not Windows look, although Windows is based off Unix also. So it tells us the device here. In Windows it tells you what drive you're on, okay? This tells us the device. We'll name device, I think later in this chapter, and that will change at that point. I know we do. And then it has a greater than sign. That will vary. You're used to in Windows it being a greater than sign always. You're going to find out this is going to change to a number sign in just a minute because the greater than sign tells us that we're just in basic mode and we can just look at stuff. If it's a number sign there, it's telling us we're in privileged mode and we can change stuff. Y'all follow on that? That's security also. Because maybe I've got you where you can configure stuff, but I just want you to be able to go in and look at settings, but I don't trust you at all on changing anything in there. You haven't worked for us long enough, been trained enough or whatever. may later move you up on security, but then I can have it set both that way, and I know that those that aren't approved to change things can't change things. Does that make sense? But they can go in and find what the settings are, so if something goes wrong, they can call me and tell me what's going wrong, but they just can't do anything about it. Okay? It's not the tightest security. So from here, so they talk about those two modes there for you, that you can go from exec mode to privileged exec mode. The exec mode is just the bottom one, and that basically just gives you the ability to look at stuff. So in this class, you're going to always, first thing be doing is going to privileged mode to get to all the other stuff you need. To do that, you're going to do enable. Now, the other part is on Cisco equipment, you don't have to spell out full words. Usually, 3 letters will do it. You can actually do less than 3 letters in some cases. You got to type in enough letters that makes it unique, where it knows exactly what it is. Does that make sense? And 3 letters normally will give you exactly the command. Okay? So enable, I think we can actually do EN, but I always do 3 letters on them, because 3 letters almost always works. So we'll do ENA. I could have spelled it out, either one, and hit enter. You'll see where it changed to the number sign now? So now I'm in privileged mode. Okay? If I want to go back down, I can disable. Okay? And that would work the same. I think you can do DIS, or it may have to be DISA, but if you don't get far enough, it'll tell you. And then they tell you about where you can go into the different devices. We're going to show you some more on those in just a minute, so I'm going to skip on that for a moment. And they go in and tell you on it. They mention about the ping and trace route commands. You're really not going to use trace route in this chapter, but you are going to use ping, I believe. And ping just allows you to see, is the other device there? You'll do ping and the address for the other device, and it'll come back and tell you, did it contact it? Okay? So you'll know, can I reach that other device? Now, in the real world, you cannot ping some devices, because ping has been abused badly. Now with the modern firewalls, we can actually set it where people can still ping the devices, but we block the abusers. If you've ever heard of a denial of service attack, DOS attack, okay, it is normally using a ping where it's been programmed to send tons of pings one after another. A ping is a high-level command to devices on networks. And ping works in Windows, Linux, Mac, iOS, whatever, okay? That's a standard command, okay? On your Windows and stuff, you can do ping and you can do the address you want to ping. And it'll come back and give you it'll make 5 attempts and show the response. On here, we can tell it to do tons. And we can also ping from somewhere else. We don't have to just ping from the device we're on. We can see if another device can reach another device. So we can tell it to ping from this other device, or we can tell it to ping from where we are, and we can tell it to do how many other pings we want to do. And you can write programs to do 3 million pings also. Now, because it is a high-level command, that means that the operating system there, or the device that receives it, That comes before it does anything else. So somebody that sends millions of them at a network, one device on a network, will lock up that network and lock that device down, because all it's sitting there doing is trying to answer all those pings coming in and does nothing else. And you have just locked out that network. Okay? And that happens all the time. Okay? There is also a DDoS, which is a distributed denial of service. And if y'all remember a year or two ago when they had the IoT one, where it was all of these Internet of Things devices attacking, that's basically what they were doing, is they had all of these Internet of Things devices attacking different locations. And so you got 3 million pings coming in from 3 million locations. Because when it just came from one location, that was a whole lot easier. You just blocked out and said no traffic allowed from that spot. Now you can have it coming from all kinds of places, and you can't just, when you come under attack, you can't just go block some spot. You've got tons of spots that you got to block. So on a lot of networks, ping is just totally blocked out. You can't ping the school for that reason, or last I knew, okay? And that if y'all try to do ping from in here, we can ping in here, but we can't ping the school device. CNN's got theirs set up correctly now, so that you can actually make a ping to see a CNN's there, and it'll tell you that you can't do an attack on them because they've got it blocking multiples, but they've got it allowed for just the 5 or so coming in at a time. Okay? And that a lot of them have done that, but there's a lot of places you can't ping on. So if you ping some spot and it says it's not accessible, because ping is a highly used diagnostic tool. That's the problem. Is that's, as far as a network person, that's when they have a problem with a network, that's their first tool they go to try to figure out what's going on. Cannot reach these other devices. Well, they got to be able to reach stuff out on the internet to know it works on the internet. So you've got to have that there, but it's been massively abused. So it's also got to be controlled. And so some places, but let's say CNN's one that has opened it back up. One, they got attacked so extensively that they closed it out, but they got so much stuff still does come at them that they did all the correct work on it, okay, and set their firewall right on it. Because the other part is they know a lot of network people, that's the one they use as a real quick, easy one to check to see is DNS working, and then can we get on the internet. Is hit CNN, because all of us know what CNN is. Whether you watch CNN or not, you know what CNN is. Second thing is, it's a short name. It's only 3 letters. Okay? That you'd want to ping CNN instead of my website, because you just got to type CNN, which is only 3 letters long, but only 2 letters. Or you can send a ping to DwightWatt.com. Well, Dwight Watt takes you about 10 letters to type. Your chances of making a typing error increases substantially, especially if your typing's like mine. Okay? So, just be aware of those. They tell you about how they lay them out in there. If it's in boldface, you literally have to enter it there. Except we'll find out not always exactly. Italics are things that you supply values on it, and so on. And so there's some options, etc. to it. And then they tell you about, there's some hotkeys out there for you in there that they give you a list of those, but don't worry so much about those. Basically, your arrow keys will work for you on there for you. Now, if you're working directly on it off the PC, sometimes they don't, because you're going through the terminal emulator and you do have to use those shortcuts, which, if you know Linux, you know. Okay? Or that a lot of times you don't have to use them anymore in there either. So I can use the up arrow, and notice it gives me back the previous command. Okay? Or I could hunt down through this list and find the one that gives me the previous command and do accordingly. I'll go down and I'll go back down through, and I'll go back, I think it's 20 commands it keeps in there is its history. Okay? Alright, then they start you into commands, and the very first one they have is one I said y'all we would probably do, which is to change the name of our device. The name of our device right now is Switch. Cisco names all of their switches Switch. All of their routers are named Router. Well, you probably wanted a different name so that if you're doing, you could actually do this from a master control, because you can actually go into the devices through your network also, besides plugging straight into them, if you have enabled that. Okay? That you'd want to give some indication to you, tell you which device you're on. Does that make sense? Or when y'all are sitting here working, that it shows here which device you're on. Besides the fact it does show it up there at the top, because it actually shows that it was labeled as S1 up there at the top. But it'll make a lot more clear of which one of the two are we on. Which probably means that we really want to name this one S1, but you'd want to come up with some type naming system to them. Okay? Whatever the book's going to normally tell you, the labs are normally going to tell you what one to use on it. But if you're out there working, figure out a system to it like they tell you in the book. If it's sitting on first floor, if you're a multi-story building, figure out a way that part of the name tells you which floor it's on, which room it's in, whatever. Okay? Does that make sense? Maybe the name of the school or whatever, the campus in our case. Something to give us an indication when we hit that switch, we know which switch we're on. So I will do host. This one you really got to go 4 characters, I'm pretty sure. But at least we do most of the time. The real command is host name. You can spell it out if you want. Okay? Space, and then the name you want to give it. So if we wanted to call it the CIST 2441. 2451, sorry. Wrong class. But that's what we wanted to call this, because this is the switch sitting in this classroom, right? Hit enter. Why didn't it like that? That's weird. Oh, I forgot a command. Before we can start entering the commands, we're at the level where that's allowed, but we got to go into where we're actually in configuration mode. I just remembered, I skipped y'all one step. That you got to do configure terminal first. However, so it's configure terminal is the command. However, you're not going to do it as configure terminal normally. And if you ask people out there that do these all the time, they may sit there and look stumped at you if you tell them about needing to use configure terminal, about what is configure terminal. Config T is what everybody knows it is. Because you can actually abbreviate terminal as T. Okay? So I do config T, and my prompt is going to change. Because when I was on the previous level, I can look at stuff more, and now I can get on into configuration. But when I was down at just the exec mode, I could not go into config T. Does that make sense to y'all? And I can actually look at more in privilege mode than I can in exec mode. Y'all follow on that? And I can also get to config T on privileged mode, but I cannot on the exec mode. So you always, when you're going in to configure these things, you're always doing initially 2 commands. Exec, and then config T. So that you're going to come out of config T to look at stuff, because you can't look when you're in config. Does that make sense? So you're going to keep dropping in and out of config T to do things. So now, if I do the same command again, now here's a one warning though. I told you can use your up arrow to go back to previous commands. That's only previous commands on the level you're on. And it will actually remember them on different levels at one time. So now I can't use the up arrow to go back to my host command already typed in. Does that make sense? Because on the config T level, I have not typed in any commands yet. So just to let you know on that one. So I'll do host again. Now, on y'all's assignments, make sure you put in exactly the name they told you to, or you're going to find it's not giving you credit for it. Okay? Because it's looking for exactly that. Now, notice it changed. Because it was switch, parentheses, config, number sign. Now it says CIST 2451, parentheses, config. So we know we're on the CIST 2451 device. That's what we've named it as now. It's no longer called switch. And we're in config mode. Questions on that? All good so far? Then they talk about how you're going to make things require passwords and stuff, because back there when we went to exec mode, to privileged mode, we can put a password on there and require a password be put in, which they're going to normally always have you do. In here, in the assignments, normally they're going to use 3 passwords. They're going to use class, they're going to use Cisco, and they're going to use CCNA 6. I think now it used to be 5 and you're in version 6, so assuming they've updated the labs, they'll probably use CCNA 6, and they'll tell you which one they want you to use. You've got to use the right one, okay? 2 reasons. One is, if it's scoring on that part, it's got to be the right one. Second one is, for me to be able to get into it, use the correct one, and normally they'll do all those. And that's the 3 you're normally going to see, although they could throw you some others, and I have seen them throw some other passwords for you to use also, but most of the time you're going to see those passwords they're going to use as their basic passwords. Real devices out there don't use those 3 passwords. Okay? Don't use password as your password either. Like 70% of the population does. Because if you go out there, studies all show that 70% of passwords are password. Okay? Not real secure. So if we want to just password getting into privileged mode, we're going to do enable, because we're setting a password on enable, and we're in config now, remember, okay? So we're saying we're going to put, that's horrible. That's not going to work. We're going to put a password on enable, okay? Now, I can do just enable and do password and the password. Problem is, when we look at our configuration, it will actually be in regular print right there for it. So, and you need to keep your configurations on file, so if something happens to your machine, you can rebuild the machine. It's in clear text right there. If you do enable secret, it encrypts it. Y'all follow on that? So if you notice here, what I just told you a moment ago, class was one of the 3 I told you they're going to commonly use. They're going to do class in the book. Except I didn't spell it, and be careful on that, because then that's a case of where you got to wipe out your whole, if you're on the real devices, you got to wipe the machine to get back into it again, because you don't know the password to it. There's not a password breaker. You just got to wipe it and start all over again. which is a reason for having a printout copy of it. On this, obviously we got the reset. So then I'll hit enter. Notice it doesn't normally tell us anything back if it's correct. Okay? It just happens. If something was wrong, like it did earlier, right there, it will tell us, and see the little caret symbol, the little house top piece? That points at where it sees the error at. Not always right where the error is, but that'll get you in the right direction usually. Okay? Because it sat there and said, wait a minute, I'm not sure what you're talking about right here. And this is where I got totally confused at. Alright, so now we've changed it to that. Let's come out of config T. To do that, Control Z or End will take you out of there. So I can do a Control Z. And notice it took me back to a prompt, just with the 2451 number sign. And it gave me a message that told me it just changed in there. And even though I'm not sitting here by the number sign, I really am sitting by the number sign because it knows what it put on the screen and ignores it. Or you can just hit enter and get the prompt line again. A lot of times I hit enter just to keep it clean looking to me. But you really don't have to. You could have just started typing right there. Now I'm going to do a disable so that we come out of enable mode, out of privileged mode. I think DIS will do. Nope. If you don't give enough characters, it'll tell you it's ambiguous. It's just telling you that there's more than one command that starts with DIS. Okay? Probably DIS-A will do the job, and it did, and I'm back out of there. Okay? What happens when I type enable this time? It's going to ask for the password. Which it did. I can't get back to enable mode unless I know what the password is. Now, here's the other part. When you type the password in here, it's not going to show you anything. You're used to in Windows that you get little dots appear across the screen. Now, y'all are used to at some gas stations, if you use your credit card there at the pump, pay at the pump, some of them don't show anything when it has you type in the zip code, which is always irritating. Okay? This does the same thing. So now if I type class, notice nothing occurred on the screen. Okay? But I really did type it in. And when I hit enter, I definitely had it right because it did it. Does everybody follow on that? So when you type in a password and you see nothing, don't get frustrated thinking, wait a minute, what's going on here? It really is working. They also show you that you've got a couple of line ports with ways that you can bring in things into other ways to go in. So this is password for going to exec mode. You can also, on the ports that you have on that device, you can put passwords on each of those ports. So we can put a password on the console port. We could put a password on our actually not even physical ports, but we can put it on virtual ports too, where somebody comes across the network onto it, which is the VTI ones. It's where you said you're allowing a network connection into this device. To administer it, you can put a password on that. So those are the VTYs. Normally there's 16 VTY ports sitting on there. So that's why when you do the line VTY 015, you're telling it you're doing from 0 through 15. So it's doing VTY 0 all the way through VTY 15. That's 16 ports. Does everybody follow on that? It's using 0 as the base number. Most of the time we've been used to do 1 as our base number. So a lot of stuff on the computer is going to run from 0. The first thing has got a 0. Line console says where we plug that console cable into, that somebody trying to come in that way, they have to put in a password to get in. That way, somebody doesn't just walk up to your machine, plug the wire into it, and log in and get right in your machine and change your config and do all kinds of weird things, take control of it, and now they're doing all weird things out there in the world. Okay? So to do that, you do line, and then you tell it which line, because those virtual ones are line connections, even though they're not physical line connections anymore, obviously. Originally, it was all physical line connections, which is why it's a line. So we got a line console, we got a line auxiliary, which they usually don't tell you about, but you got several of them, plus you got all the virtuals. So we do line console. And that will get us to where we configure that line. And password is all they're having you do right now, but we can do other stuff to it too. Later, you can actually give it a login name where they have to put a name and a password, and you can assign different names and passwords to coming in through that port. So if I allow each of y'all to get into it through going through the line, I can give each of you a separate one, or I could just use a universal one for the group. But if I really want to make it secure, I want to give each one of you a separate one so that it doesn't get out there universally shared with everybody else. And that I know then from my log files who did it. So now I'm not back there where I'm supposed to be. I got to be in config again, and I've skipped that. Sorry about that. I'll do my config T again. I'm back in config mode. Now I do my line console. And I've got my 0 on the end. So it said it was incomplete because you could have more than one console port on there. But normally you only have one console port on there, and it's console port 0. So you got to tell it that it is port 0 I want, so I can pull up my command again, add the 0 on the end. And notice that's console space 0. Because we're going to the console ports, and we're talking about specifically port 0 of the console ports. Does everybody follow on that? And then I can do from there, just password. This one you really can't do into secret. Okay? And then I'll put my password. And they use the Cisco one that I told you about earlier. At this point now, if we tried to come through the console port, like I told you that one assignment's going to have you do, it would require you to do a password just to get through that port. And then when you went to go to privileged mode, it would throw you another one that you got to do another password to get up to privileged mode, as we've got it set now. Does that make sense? All right. Now the other part is, if you're going to use those ports and you're going to use with the password on it, if you haven't done anything to them, they will allow you to come in through them, just plugging straight in or coming straight across the network wire. But if you set this up with password, the other part is you also have to tell it they are allowed to log in on it. So if you set a password on it but you don't do the other piece of saying log in, nobody can get to that port anyway, because the port's blocked out and they're not allowed to log into it to even put a password into it. Does that make sense? So you got to use the login command here too to tell it login is allowed, but you have said they have to use a password with it. If you got to the 5th course, it teaches you about how to put usernames on there also, and various passwords. But at this point, all they want you to do is just a simple one. So now somebody can log in through the console port with a password of Cisco. Control Z will take us back down a level if we want, because notice it says we're in line configuration. Because notice that prompt changed on us as we went, telling us what level of configuration we're in. And if we want to come back out of line configuration, we would just either do a Control Z, or end might take us all the way back down to the config. Take us further down. That took us all the way out of config. Okay? So you really want to use Control Z, but they keep acting like they're synonymous, and so a lot of times I have to type in config T a lot of extra times because I'll accidentally come out too far. Because if you did that, just like I just did there, just typing config T again, I'll get me back in configuration. So you will type config T a whole lot, you'll type enable a whole lot. Alright, then they mention about the banner message, which they've already done for you. That was the one they had the green checks on, remember? So you don't have to do it, but to do the banner message is called message of the day. This is left over from Unix, okay? It's really not used as that anymore, but originally in Unix back in the 70s and in the 80s when I was using Unix, we actually did use message of the day when it was all terminals connecting in. And I would pop up messages on their screen when they logged on that would pop up and give them some message some days. When it got to Christmas time, I'd put Merry Christmas up there for the week before or whatever. It's something, if I needed to take the server down that day that everything worked off of at some point during the day, I'd put it on there and tell them network's going to be down at 1 o'clock or whatever. Okay? Does that make sense to y'all? Main thing message of the day now is used. It's not used to do that anymore, and it was actually abused to a degree. Notice these things have gotten abused at times. Now what it's usually used for is a legal statement there that tells you that if you're not authorized, you're not permitted onto this machine. Okay? And if you're doing this out there for a business or whatever, you may well want to get a lawyer to write the words for you to get it exactly right on it. So if somebody comes into your system, if you've got that message of the day for them right there, when they get onto that machine, and if they go on in and do stuff and mess it up, that if you've got that message there telling them that they're not authorized to get into it, etc., and they've gone further, they have just gone through the no trespassing sign. The posted no trespassing sign. Not just the no trespassing sign, but the posted one. Y'all follow on that? Because if it's posted, you put it down at the courthouse that you've got no trespassing signs around, and they're in more trouble on it, okay? This is the equivalent type thing on it, that you have put signs around and you have put it in your stuff, okay? It gives you more legal rights to prosecute somebody. Does that make sense? And it keeps the ones that shouldn't be there, that got in there by accident, got to that point, they know to back out, and that's okay. Because people are going to hit your machine at different times, whether because they're looking at different things and traveling the internet, okay? Just don't go any further in here. You've got a sign here. Because people can drive by your land all the time, all they want, and they can get out and stand there by the side of the road looking at your land, but they just can't get onto your land. And if you got the no trespassing signs there, they're allowed there onto where the road right of way goes to, right? But if they go beyond that, then they're in trouble. So that's what message of the day is normally used for today. It's abbreviated MOTD, and that's the command you put in, MOTD. So you put MOTD, and then you put some delimiter, which can be anything, to start it off. Normally people use a number sign before the message to mark the start of the message, and then you're going to use that same delimiter to end the message. So it's something that's not going to go in the message. Does that make sense? So if you're going to put a number sign in the middle of your message, don't use a number sign because it'll cut the message off at that point. But it can be anything to delimit it. There's not required delimiters like you're used to on everything else out there in the Windows world. This is wide open. This is the Unix world. Okay? So I can put number sign and put keep out or die. And then put a number sign. Okay? Your assignment on one of them, they have you do it, and they tell you to make a message of the day that includes, and there's some word that they tell you they want in it. You can make the message of the day anything you want as long as you've got that word somewhere in it, and it will count. Does that make sense? So make sure when you do it, if it says you didn't get it correct, go back and look at your message of the day again and see, did I put the word they said had to be in there? And you can go back and change it. So I can hit enter. I'm going to take it. What did I just do wrong? Oh, I forgot banner. Whoops. You got to put banner first because there are some other banners you could put up popping up. And then you put message of the day. So in this case, I left out banner at the beginning. I can use my up arrow, bring back the command, use my back arrow, all the way across here. It's been 3 semesters since I did this. It was spring last year, okay? That I was really doing all these little commands, so sorry about that. So I can type in banner space, hit enter, and it took. And if we exited out to log back onto the machine, we'd see before we did anything logging on, back there said in that set of directions, that set of information it gave us at the beginning, at the bottom of it before it said press return to start or whatever it said on that, where it said to press enter to enter or return, it would have that message sitting right across there at the bottom of it. Does that make sense to y'all? So you just added something after all of that explanation describing what this machine is. And they haven't even logged in yet, because to go any further they got to log into this machine obviously now. Alright, questions on all of that part so far, those commands? Where we'll stop it on this one is with this last command. You got to save what you do. Because at this point, if I just shut this switch off, okay, now in Packet Tracer, if I save and shut down, it'll actually still be sitting there on a real machine. But if I powered the machine off in Packet Tracer, or if I was on a real machine and I turned the machine off at this point, it's going to all go, because I haven't saved it, have I? Y'all follow on that? But in Packet Tracer, it keeps however it is at the point where you were at. Does that make sense? Because when you come back into Packet Tracer, it have everything open just like you had it when you left it. So it lets you get away with some stuff sometimes. The command to save, that's a little bit longer. You'll learn this one. It's copy, run, start. Now spelled out fully in the full long words, it's copy, run, dash configuration, space, startup, dash configuration. Okay? Copy, run, start's a whole lot shorter. Because there are several copies of your configuration out there at this point. This is just like when you're in Word or anything else. If you have opened up a document in Word and you start making changes in it, how many copies of that document exist on your computer at that point? two. The one that's sitting on the disk drive that you opened to start with, and the one that's sitting in memory that you have changed around. Does that make sense? Here in the router or the switch, there's two configurations also. There's the one that you told it to run. There's the one that is running, which is called running configuration. And there is the one that you started it from that's saved out there in flash memory. Okay? Which is a startup. Okay? That when you started the device, it goes and grabs that startup configuration. And that's the direction it uses to figure out how to set this device up at that point. Sort of like the registry in Windows. Okay? Except it's a little easier. So we're going to do copy, run, start. We're saying take the one we've got in the running area right now, save it out there as a startup. So we're actually saving in a flash, because the other one is the one that's sitting there just in memory. We want to put it back into our storage device, which on the routers and switches is flash storage. Okay? Just like on your little pocket thumb drives, or on your little card inside your camera, on the phone. That's what I meant to say. Okay? Could be in your camera too. I'll follow on that. It's the same flash memory, or on your solid state hard drive if you got one of those now. Okay? So we'll do copy, run, start. They did not hire me for my typing ability, which again proved right there. And the delete key doesn't work, but the backspace key does work to delete off stuff. Okay? Y'all follow on that? So if I kept hitting delete right then, it wouldn't delete. But if I hit the backspace key, it'll delete the previous character off for you. That's Unix, Linux also. Okay? And now if I hit enter again, now I'm in config mode, and I'm not supposed to be in config mode. So you got to come out of config mode. You want to be back just in privilege mode, but not config. So I'll use my Control Z. Go back down to privilege mode. This won't work in exec mode. Okay, you got to be in privilege to do this. And I'll do my copy, run, start again, and maybe I can type right this time. And hit enter. And then it's going to say, where do you want to save it to? And it's got startup config in parentheses, which is the name of the real file you're saving it out there is. Because remember I said it's copy, run -config space startup -config. Here it tells us that's where it's going to save it to, unless you tell it differently. You told it that's where you want to save it to. I don't know why it's determined it wants to ask you, is that the location you want to save it to? But it does. Since it's already got it there in the brackets there for you, you just have to hit enter, because it's going to take that default that's sitting there. Does that make sense? If you did want to save it as another name, you just type the other name. Okay? But it's saying, if you just hit enter, this is what I'm going to use. So I'll hit enter. Because I don't have hardly anything in that config file, it was done like that. But it said building configuration. If you had a ton of stuff in there, sometimes you'll see it pause for a moment on that, and then it says OK when it's done, and it's back to the prompt. But usually it's all instant on it, but it's got it built for that. Okay? I know back when I started on all of this stuff, and we had slower machines a degree back then too, that you would actually see a pause there for a moment before it came back, where in this case there was no delay. I hit enter and it's back to the prompt instantly. Any questions on that? Now, when I start it up again, if I shut the device down, start it up again, it will remember everything I just did. Okay? Now, everything I did wrong, it does not remember. It's only the stuff that's correct. Does everybody follow on that? And if I had have gone in and changed my message of the day, it'll only remember the latest one. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's where I'm telling you, again, having that little check results button is really handy. You can go back and make changes all you want to get it correct. Okay? And even on the real devices, that this stuff all changes. Okay? Any questions? Then we'll go through the rest of the commands on Thursday, assuming today's Tuesday. This 4-day week's going to confuse us all. Okay? This afternoon I'm going to go through this and hopefully through more of it than that, but hopefully faster. I may have to do them a couple of sessions. That I'm going to go through it for the online class, and then I'm going to stick the recording for that, because they'll have, I'm going to share the screen with them, and it'll be in the recording that I'll stick that recording once it gets saved out there and becomes available. I'll stick it into y'all's class also, because I can pull it out as an MP4 file and stick it in other classes. And so then you'll be able to look back at that if you want to look back at me actually doing the stuff. Does that make sense? Because that might be helpful for you at some point. Hopefully it's been all perfectly clear in here today anyway, and that you don't have to look at anything again. But the time you get out of here, you may go, well, mud's a little clearer than it seems to me now on this. The other part is just go in there and try it. You're not going to hurt anything. Okay? So if you goof something up, you just straighten it out and keep on going. Or if all else fails, just reload the whole packet tracer file from scratch again. Because you can always go back out and re-download it and you've got a clean file. Just once you get it to 100, don't goof it up at that point. Go get another copy if you want to goof up some more after that, because that's the one you want to turn into me. Any questions?
Whenever you put
Huh? Okay, let me show you that. I think I'm remembering my command. Yeah. If you do show run, it will show you the configuration. If you want to see the startup one, you can do show start, okay? Normally you do show run because you want to see the one I've got in memory that I'm working on right now. Does that make sense to everybody? But the show command is one you're going to learn a whole bunch of different things you can do with show. So I did show run. Again, it did a building configuration because it puts it into the form to display it to us. And it told us which one and stuff on it. Notice there, host name. The command fully spelled out that we put in, notice. That we put in what? Host and that name, but there it is. Enable secret is using MD5 for its encryption. Okay, that's a 256-bit encryption method out there, so it's a good encryption. There is class encrypted. Can y'all get that out of there? Y'all see? Does that answer that question for you? So, and then it comes on down. It's got stuff already pre-built in here on it, so it's got about the interface and some other stuff on here. Some of the stuff won't make any sense to you at this point. If you hit enter, it'll give you one additional line at a time. If you hit space, and this is the opposite of what I would want it to do, it'll give me another screen. And we're on a switch, so it's got 24 Ethernet ports on it, remember? So we can configure each of those interfaces, so all of those interfaces show there, but there's nothing in them. And then it comes down here, and there's our banner MOTD, keep out or die. There's our line console set up with the password to log in. So you see it all. The rest of the stuff is all built in there for you already. Okay? But notice everything that we just said is all there. With the command, using the command that it was. Okay? If we did it shortcutted, it spelled it on out, but it puts it in the configuration file. And notice by default these things are set to log into those devices without requiring a password. Now if you put password on there, at that point when you said password, and you got to do it that order, do password and then log in, because when you do password that disables the login unless you enable login specifically at that point. And so that's why you do password and then log in. You notice it shows it the same thing right here. Because by default it was enabled, but when you go and put something on there, you have disabled the login. At that point you have to tell it login again to allow login still on that port. Great, questions on that? And then the shutdown that you see that sometimes up through there, maybe on just a few, but we're going to use that one a ton. You're going to find out that that's where I'm going to teach you how to, that it requires you to do a double negative, because we're going to do no shutdowns all over the place, which actually says start. Sort of like on Windows. If you want to shut down Windows, what do? Where do you go to shut down Windows? Huh? Start. Okay? You go to start to shut it down. Which always seems a little strange because you're, why do I want to go to start to shut down? Here, if you want it to start something, you tell it don't shut it down. Okay? So you do no shutdown here, you do start to shut down on Windows. So when we do that, I'm going to tell you, ignore what your English teacher, and don't go tell your English teacher what I just told you have to do today. But you got to do a double negative here. But that's what you got to do. Because no shutdown is a double negative on it. Alright, questions on all of that? Y'all got the idea? That really gets you going basic on the rest. The other things they're going to have you do is, where we saw those interfaces back up in there, you're going to put IP addresses on there. In Cisco, you don't get to use the shortcut on subnet mask, so you're going to have to spell out your subnet mask. For a lot of other stuff, you just put a /24 or slash whatever number of how many bits it is. And here we have to actually put 255.255.255.0. Luckily they don't make us put it in all 32 binary bits. And that's going to be the biggest thing we'll probably do first. It's just addressing still. And we're not going to really talk about how those addresses are. We're just going to how to put the addresses in that they're giving you the address. When we get chapter 6, 7, or 8, I don't remember which one of those chapters it is, but it's one of those chapters. We're going to talk about all about addressing and what that subnet mask is and everything else. The subnet mask tells you which part of the address is the network portion and which part is the number of this specific machine. So what network is it on and which machine number is it? And the subnet mask tells us which part of that number is each of those two things. Alright, then I will see y'all Thursday. We have just run 5 minutes overtime, so y'all can leave the $25 extra fee for that in the box as you walk out. I guess that offsets where I let y'all out a few minutes early the other day. But I told you that the first day that a lot of times we're going to run right up to the last minute and over. And that's, sometimes y'all are gonna, if y'all got to go somewhere else, y'all are gonna tell me to shut up, and sometimes y'all are gonna go, let's just keep going right now. That's weird.